Hello, hello, here's Aage again. I want to talk to you a little bit about my UFO experiences. I'm going to explain a little bit. I've had a few, and also talk maybe a little bit about what are they. So first, maybe we should look at the definition of UFO. A UFO stands for unidentified flying object, which could really be, if you can't figure out what it is, you're left with UFO. If you throw something in the air and I don't know what you throw in there and I can't see what it is, technically, by definition, that is a UFO. And that's why it has happened, not that often, but I've been called a debunker because I've spent so much time in the air as a pilot. I have a little better understanding of what can be out there. You know, we got airplanes, we got rockets, we have all kinds of other things, satellites and birds. But there are some things that cannot be explained. And those are the UFOs. Now, I've had some experiences, and there's been quite a few of them. And I flew executive charter a lot. And also I flew freight at night a lot. And when you fly as much as I did, logged well over 10,000 hours of flight time over the 23 years that I flew, and you see stuff. You see stuff that shouldn't be there, but it is. And we may wonder what it is, and our imagination goes wild on us trying to figure out what this is. First, of course, we stay with the, could it be an airplane? And if we run out of that, then we go to the next one, which, there we go. We can go just about anywhere. And we end up with a UFO. Now, flying charter into all kinds of different airports in just about every state of the United States, I ended up spending a lot of times at pilot lounges at the airport. And when we fly somebody in for, let's say, a 5-hour meeting, we sit at the airport and we talk to other pilots and so on. And I ever so often brought up the issue of UFOs. And I found that there is probably about 3 different types of pilots when it comes to UFOs. 1/3 says, yeah, I've seen them. I know they're out there. Another third says, I've seen some stuff that I can't explain, but I don't really believe that there are aliens or UFOs. And then there's another third that says, I don't want to talk about it. Or, no, I don't believe in it. Or they say, nope, never seen anything. And I came down to the ones that says, I don't want to talk about it. Those are the guys that have seen something, but they don't want to talk about it. Especially in the 80s and the 90s, because airline pilots specifically, they would not talk about most of this unless a pilot myself, I open up first and I talk about my experiences. Then they could come out and talk about theirs. But the airlines were ruthless about this. They could fire pilots if they said or wrote a report that they had seen a UFO. The term UFO on a pilot report was deadly for some of the airlines. They could get fired. And they're aware of that. And there's still some of that stigma. It is getting easier now. The pilots are coming out and they talk about stuff. So that's a good thing. I want to tell you a little bit about my experiences. I guess the first one I had was still back in Europe before I came to the United States. I I got to associate with some people that talked about UFOs quite a bit, and I got interested. And growing up in Europe as a little kid, I got to read newspapers. And in those newspapers, there were articles about round airplanes that the Nazi German war machine had created that had no propellers or wings on it. It was newspaper articles. And I wondered, how can that be? It doesn't have wings? And then I got started to get interested. So I started figuring a little bit on that. And by the time I was probably about 11 or 12 or so, I built this UFO detector that actually it worked. It was built around a compass and a bell and, you know, a few things so that if something that came in the vicinity that altered the direction of a compass needle, it touched a wire, set off the electric circuit, and the bell went off, and I could grab the binoculars and go outside and have a look. I remember 3 times that it went off. 2 of the times I went outside and I saw something. The third one I don't remember. I think it was cloudy or something. I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing anything more than twice on that particular occasion. Now, later, I came to the United States. I went to flight school. I ended up in northern Nebraska, my first job as a flight instructor, way out in the sticks in Ainsworth, Nebraska. Like the saying goes, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And you could also smell it because it was cattle country, and yeah, it smelled. And there were one time I was over in O'Neill, Nebraska, and that was a lady over there that was getting in a pilot license, and I was giving her dual flight instruction. And we had been up for close to an hour, gone quite far out there. We were on our way back. And I was sitting there just kind of looking forward to get back to the airport. And I saw this thing that came from the right at a 45-degree angle on my aircraft, about probably a couple of 200, 300, 400 feet below the aircraft. It came at an angle very fast and went straight out to the back. And it looked really strange. It wasn't round. It almost looked like a skateboard. It was tipping up a little bit in the front. It seemed like it wasn't much, but it was just and it had windows on the side of it. And looked like nothing that I have ever seen before. Now, this was before the time of skateboards. It was back in 1970, I don't know, 3, yeah, 4, something like that. And it went very fast. It was probably traveling twice the speed, or 2 to 3 times the speed of what I was doing, which could be about 120 miles an hour. So there was well over 200 miles an hour it was traveling. And as soon as I saw that thing coming and it left on off to the left shoulder, I just whipped the airplane around to try to see, but it was gone. Did not see anything. I asked the student, the lady, if she had seen anything, and she hadn't. And since she hadn't seen it, there really was no need to talk about it. I told her there was an unexplainable thing that flew underneath, and she thought maybe it was an eagle or something. So we never talked about it again. And then there was another incident several years, quite a few years later. That was back when I was, we had a flight operation in Minneapolis and one in Omaha. And I was down in Omaha, and I was flying out to Denver. And it was, I was up quite, probably about 10, 12,000 feet or something like that. And I could see a light coming over the horizon in the west. I was going west. It came up from the west. That light went very fast across the sky, and it went over me and back behind me. So I turned around and I looked over, and it was going down the horizon in the east. And that thing took no more from the west horizon over me and to the east horizon, maybe 2 to 3 minutes. It was obvious that it was very high and a bright light. And that was during the time that there just started a war over in Iraq. I don't know if it had a connection to that or if it didn't. I'm not sure. But that was no airplane. That was definitely a so-called UFO, and it obviously had to be in space or low orbit, outside of the atmosphere, because there were no, bang or anything from the shock wave of the air. Now, there was another one that was on a medical flight. I was based in Omaha, and we went on a medical flight, and on the way, I believe, I'm not sure exactly where we was going, but I was in the car. This was on a King Air, and I was in the captain's seat, and I had a co-pilot, and we were going in and out of the clouds, and we had a couple of nurses and a patient in the back. So yeah, I guess we were going somewhere. And from the left corner of my eye, I could see this little thing that looked like a pencil, but it was a short pencil, maybe about 4 or 5 times as long as it was wide. It wasn't like the full length of a pencil, but maybe about that far. And it came from the left, went straight across about my altitude and off to the right and disappeared. From the time I saw it on the left, I looked over there and I could see it traveling, and it traveled so fast, it was hard to keep your eyes on it. I was always seemed to be a little bit behind as it traveled across my flight path. And it looked maybe, could be in about maybe 4 to 5 miles ahead of me. So it was fairly close. You're not supposed to be within about 4 or 5 miles of another airplane up there. That's a little too close. So it went off the side, and I looked over at my co-pilot and I asked him, "Did you see that?" He looked at me, didn't say anything. I remember asking him again, "Did you see that?" He just looked straight ahead, didn't say anything. Obviously, he saw it. And I just didn't say anymore in the airplane. We didn't talk about it. So when we got on the ground, I seem to remember I asked him again, and he didn't want to talk about it. And later on, I found out that, yeah, he was a born-again Christian, and in his Christian belief, anything that is not in the Bible or cannot be explained like this, that's a demon. So I can understand why he did not want to talk about it. And I have no idea what it was. For all I know, it could be one of those. But whatever that thing was, traveled so fast, it must have been several thousand miles an hour. And airplanes don't do that, especially looking like this, without wings or tails on it or engines. So that was a flying cigar. There is hordes of reports of cigar-shaped ships that has been observed in the sky. In fact, all the way back to the Second World War, at the end of the Second World War, the Allied forces found the drawings of a ship like that. There, it was called the Andromeda. That was a big cylindrical ship looking like a pencil, and it had room for 4 small flying discs in it. They had the drawings for it, but we don't know if they actually made one yet by that time in 1945, April. So we don't know if they made it. If they did, they flew it out of there to South America or to Neue Schwabenland in Antarctica, where they had 2 bases. So those are the 3 stories that there's been other things that I've seen, but there's probably not much of interest because they were minor ones. I often get the question also, have you seen any aliens? And I would say yes. An interdimensional being one time that I met, but that gets a little involved, and I'm going to make another video on that because that is quite interesting actually. He was lit up like a light bulb, so that could be another video. Every so often I also get the question, when are we going to have disclosure? Well, I don't know the date. I don't think anybody knows enough. I don't think the aliens themselves or the federal government know the date because they are playing us against the truth. And from what I saw in a universal download that I had, that was that there will be 2 phases of it. That we will wake up one morning and the sky is full of ships, hundreds or even thousands of them. The first time we see them, they are not our friends. The second wave that do away with the first one, those are our friends. Because the government, I believe mostly the government of the United States, they have a program called Operation Blue Beam. You can Google it. Actually, stay away from Google. They're censoring stuff. You won't find much of the good stuff there. Go to any other DuckDuckGo or something else. Operation Blue Beam, investigated. Because that is the government program, that is basically the last chance to subdue the masses, and that is a fake alien invasion. And it will be, the sky will be full of holographic images of round and triangular ships. And we all know that the federal government, or should I say the dark side of the federal government, has built these circular discs, and they have laser weapons on them. So there will be 1 or few of them in between, shooting at the ground and creating fear, which they feed off of and control the masses. So the first one are not our friends, but the second one will. That's what I saw. I am in that timeline, it would be so. If we are able to switch the timeline into a more spiritual direction, chances are it might be different, but watch out for it. So I guess that's all I had to say for this time. So see you in the next video.